What happens when your parents skip your husband's funeral for a cruise, then show up demanding his life insurance money? And what happens when your 9-year-old son decides to teach them a lesson they'll never forget? This is the story of how my family tried to steal my son's future, and how a fourth grader's notebook brought down their entire scheme. You know what they say about how quickly life can change. One phone call, one knock at the door, one moment where everything you thought you knew just stops. For me, that moment came on a Tuesday evening in October. I was making dinner, 9-year-old Ethan was sprawled on the living room floor doing homework, and my husband Jake was supposed to be home any minute from parent-teacher conferences at Madison Middle School. The call came at 7:43 p.m. "Mrs. Blake, this is Officer Martinez with the Austin Police Department." My hands went numb. The wooden spoon I was holding clattered to the kitchen floor. "There's been an accident on Highway 35. Your husband—" "I'm so sorry, ma'am. He didn't make it." Jake Blake, 37 years old, middle school math teacher, the man who still left me little notes in my lunch bag after 12 years of marriage, the dad who never missed one of Ethan's soccer games, gone, just like that. A drunk driver had crossed the median. Jake died instantly. But here's the thing about grief. It doesn't just hit you once. It keeps hitting you in waves. The first wave was the phone call. The second was telling Ethan. The third was realizing I had to call my parents. I dialed my mom's number with shaking fingers. It rang 4 times before she picked up. "Hannah, sweetie, we're literally walking through the airport right now. Can this wait? We're about to board our cruise to the Caribbean. You know how your father gets when we're running late." "Mom," my voice cracked. "Jake's dead." Silence. Then, "What?" "He was in a car accident. He's gone, Mom. I need you." I heard her talking to my dad in the background, muffled words I couldn't quite make out. Then she came back on the line. "Oh, honey, that's terrible. But, sweetie, we've been planning this cruise for months. We've already paid for everything, and you know how impossible it is to get refunds on these things. Can't someone else help for now? Maybe Jake's sister. We'll be back in 10 days. 10 days. My husband was dead, and my mother was worried about cruise refunds. "Mom, the funeral is going to be this weekend." "Well, I mean, funerals are really more for the living, aren't they? Jake won't know if we're there or not. And honestly, Hannah, you're so much stronger than the rest of us. You'll handle this just fine." She hung up after promising to check in when we get back. That night, I held Ethan while he sobbed into my shoulder. He kept asking if Grandpa Roger and Grandma Linda were coming to help us. I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. The next few days were a blur of funeral arrangements, casseroles from neighbors and Jake's fellow teachers stopping by with tears in their eyes and stories about how much their students loved him. But my phone stayed silent. No call from my parents. No flowers. Not even a text message. My brother Ryan sent a brief message. "Sorry for your loss. Mom and Dad told me what happened. Hang in there." That was it. Jake's funeral was on Saturday. The church was packed. His students, former students, parents, teachers, the entire Madison Middle School community showed up. The principal spoke about Jake's dedication. 3 different parents told stories about how he'd stayed after school to help their struggling kids with math. Ethan, brave little 9-year-old Ethan, stood up and said his dad was his hero. I kept looking toward the back of the church, hoping to see my parents' familiar faces, but they never came. 2 rows behind me, I spotted a woman I hadn't seen in years. Aunt May, my mother's sister. She caught my eye and nodded slightly. After the service, she approached me. "I'm so sorry, Hannah. Jake was a good man." "Thank you for coming, Aunt May. I didn't expect to see you here." She glanced around. "Where are your parents?" I couldn't answer. My throat closed up. "I see." Her jaw tightened. "Some things never change." That evening, after all the well-wishers had gone home and Ethan was finally asleep, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at my phone. Still nothing from my parents. Then, at 11:47 p.m., a text message popped up from my mother. How was it? 3 words. After burying my husband, after saying goodbye to the love of my life, after watching our 9-year-old son grieve his father, my mother wanted to know how the funeral was, like she was asking about a movie I'd seen. I stared at those 3 words until they blurred together, and that's when I realized something that would change everything my parents had shown me, exactly who they were. The question was, what was I going to do about it? The morning of Jake's funeral, I woke up to Ethan standing beside my bed in his little black suit, the one we'd bought for his school's winter concert just 2 months ago. He was holding his phone. "Mom, should I call Grandpa and Grandma? Maybe they forgot what time the funeral starts." My heart shattered all over again, but I managed to smile and told him we should get ready first. St. Mary's Catholic Church was where Jake and I had gotten married 9 years earlier. Walking through those same doors, seeing the same stained glass windows, but this time carrying a program with my husband's picture on it, it felt surreal. But then something beautiful happened. People started arriving. Jake's teaching colleagues from Madison Middle School filled an entire section. Former students, some now in high school, came with their parents. Mrs. Peterson from next door, the mailman, the guy from the corner deli who always saved Jake the good bagels. One of Jake's students, a shy 7th grader named Maria, approached me before the service started. "Mrs. Blake, Mr. Blake helped me pass algebra when everyone else said I was too stupid for math. He stayed after school every Tuesday for 3 months just to help me. I brought this." She handed me a card covered in signatures from Jake's current students. Inside, in careful middle school handwriting, "Mr. Blake made us believe we could do anything. Thank you for sharing him with us." I was crying before I even opened it. But through all of this, Ethan kept turning around in the front pew scanning the church. "Are they here yet, Mom?" he whispered during the opening hymn. "Not yet, sweetheart." During the eulogy, when Principal Martinez was talking about Jake's dedication to his students, "Mom, did they sit in the back? I can't see them." "I don't think they made it, honey." Halfway through the service, when we were supposed to share memories, maybe their flight got delayed. Each question was like a knife twisting deeper, not just because my parents weren't there, but because I had to watch my 9-year-old son learn the same painful lesson I'd been learning my entire life, that we simply weren't their priority. See, this wasn't new. When I graduated summa cum laude from architecture school, they missed it for my brother Ryan's college party. When Jake and I bought our first house, they were too busy to come see it. When Ethan was born, they visited for exactly 2 hours before complaining about hospital parking fees. But this, missing their son-in-law's funeral, missing their grandson's goodbye to his father, this was a new low even for them. The service was beautiful despite their absence. Jake's best friend Mike told the story about how Jake once spent his own money to buy graphing calculators for kids who couldn't afford them. 3 different parents shared how Jake had changed their children's lives. The church choir sang Jake's favorite hymn, Amazing Grace. And then I saw her, Aunt May, sitting alone in the back row. She was my mother's older sister, but they'd had some falling out years ago. Something about my grandfather's will that my mom never wanted to discuss. I hadn't seen May since I was in college. After the burial, after the reception, after the last casserole had been delivered, and the final visitor had left, May appeared at my front door. "I hope it's okay that I came," she said. "I know your mother and well, but Jake was a good man, and you're my niece." We sat in my living room while Ethan played quietly upstairs. May made tea the way I remembered from childhood visits before the family split. "They didn't come," I said. It wasn't a question. May shook her head. "I heard about the cruise. I'm sorry, Hannah. I wish I could say I was surprised." "What happened between you and Mom?" "She never talks about it." May was quiet for a long moment, stirring her tea. "Your grandfather left some money when he died. Not a fortune, but enough. Your mother felt she deserved the larger share because she'd been taking care of him. When the will said otherwise, let's just say Linda doesn't handle disappointment well." She tried to contest it. She tried to convince me to give her my portion, said it was only fair since she'd sacrificed so much. When I refused, May shrugged. That was 12 years ago. We haven't spoken since. I thought about that text message. How was it? 3 words that somehow captured everything wrong with my relationship with my parents. The thing is, May continued, your mother sees relationships as transactions. What can you do for her? How do you make her look good? Jake was just a middle school teacher, not impressive enough for her cocktail party conversations. You're successful, but you don't need her financial help, so what's the point of investing in you? It all clicked into place. The missed graduations, the brief visits, the way they talked about Ryan's crypto investments like he was the next Warren Buffett while barely asking about my architecture firm, the way they'd always introduced Jake as Hannah's husband instead of by name. But Ethan, I started. Ethan is collateral damage, May said gently, just like you were. That night after May had gone home and Ethan was asleep, I sat in Jake's study looking at our family photos. There were dozens of pictures, Ethan's birthday parties, Christmas mornings, vacation trips, school events. In every single photo that included my parents, they looked uncomfortable like they were checking their watches. But in the photos with just Jake, Ethan, and me, we were laughing. We were happy. We were enough. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Hope everything went well today. We'll call when we get back. The weather here is gorgeous, miss you. She signed it with a palm tree emoji. I stared at that message for a full 5 minutes. Then I turned off my phone and made a decision that would change everything. I was done waiting for my parents to love me the way I needed them to. I was done making excuses for them to Ethan, and I was definitely done pretending their absence didn't hurt. Some people never learn to put family first. But I was about to teach them exactly what that meant. A week after the funeral, I was starting to find some kind of rhythm. Ethan was back at school. I was working from home, taking calls with clients who were incredibly understanding about my situation. Aunt May had been stopping by every other day with groceries and homework help for Ethan. For the first time since Jake died, I felt like maybe we could get through this. That's when they showed up. I was in my kitchen reviewing blueprints for a downtown office renovation when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the window, I saw my parents' black Mercedes and my brother Ryan climbing out of a red Tesla. My stomach dropped. The doorbell rang twice before I answered it. There stood my mother, perfectly tanned from her cruise, holding a small bouquet of grocery store flowers. Behind her, my father adjusted his golf shirt, and Ryan checked his phone. Surprise, Mom said, like this was a social visit. We wanted to come see how you're doing. I stared at them. 10 days. It had taken them 10 days to drive the 45 minutes from their house to mine. We brought flowers, she added, thrusting the bouquet at me. The price sticker was still on the plastic wrapper. Thanks, I managed, stepping aside to let them in. Dad immediately headed for Jake's recliner, the one where Jake used to grade papers every evening. Watching my father settle into that chair like he owned it made my chest tight. You look tired, honey, Mom said, scanning my living room like she was appraising it. Are you eating enough? You've lost weight. I'm fine. Ryan was already pacing around the room, examining things. He picked up one of Jake's teaching awards from the mantel, read it, and set it back down without comment. Where's Ethan? Mom asked. Upstairs doing homework? Good. School's important. Structure, you know. She paused. So, how are you managing financially, I mean? Here it comes, I thought. I'm managing fine. Dad leaned forward in Jake's chair. Now, Hannah, be realistic. Single motherhood is expensive. You've got the mortgage, Ethan's school costs your business overhead. Teachers don't exactly make the big bucks, you know. Jake had life insurance, I said carefully. Ryan's head snapped up from his phone. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance. Well, that's smart planning, Mom said. Jake was always practical. How much, if you don't mind me asking? I did mind. But before I could answer, Ryan jumped in. Actually, Mom, this is perfect timing. Hannah, I wanted to talk to you about an incredible opportunity. He pulled out his phone and started swiping through screens. I'm launching a cryptocurrency investment platform. Think Coinbase, but for institutional clients. We're talking about disrupting the entire financial services industry. I just stared at him. The thing is, we need seed capital to really scale this thing. Traditional investors are still scared of crypto, but family gets it. Family sees the vision. Dad nodded approvingly. Ryan's always been ahead of the curve on this technology stuff. I've already got 3 other investors lined up, Ryan continued. But I need one more significant investment to reach our funding goal. Something in the 6-figure range. My mouth went dry. 6 figures. Jake had good life insurance, right? Mom said gently. You wouldn't have to worry about anything for years. Think of this as keeping the money in the family, growing it, making it work for you. And for Ethan's future, Dad added. College is expensive these days. I couldn't speak. They'd missed Jake's funeral to go on a cruise, but now they were sitting in my living room in Jake's chair asking for his life insurance money. Ryan's projections show a 300% return within 18 months, Mom said. That's much better than just letting it sit in some boring savings account. The crypto market is exploding right now, Ryan said, scrolling through charts on his phone. Bitcoin just hit a new high. Ethereum is through the roof. This is the ground floor of the next tech revolution, Hannah. Dad knows about money. Tell her dad. Your brother's right. I've been watching the markets for 30 years. This is the opportunity of a lifetime. That's when I heard it. The soft creak of floorboards upstairs. Ethan's bedroom was directly above the living room. He was listening. I need to think about it, I said quietly. Of course, Mom said. We're not pressuring you. We just want what's best for you and Ethan. Ryan put his phone away. The thing is, this funding round closes next Friday. After that, the opportunity's gone. So we can't think too long, you know. Next Friday, I repeated. 1 week, Dad said. But Hannah, this is family. We're not going anywhere. We're here to support you. Support. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. They stayed for another hour, making small talk about their cruise, Ryan's business plans, Mom's new book club. Normal family conversation, as if they hadn't just asked me to hand over my dead husband's life insurance money. When they finally left, promising to check in soon, I locked the front door and leaned against it. My hands were shaking. Mom! I looked up. Ethan was sitting at the top of the stairs in his pajamas. How long have you been up there, sweetheart? Since they came in. His voice was very small. Are they going to take what Dad left for us? I climbed the stairs and sat down beside him. He leaned against my shoulder. No, baby. They're not taking anything. But they said Dad's money should stay in the family. Aren't we family? Out of the mouths of babes. We are family, Ethan. You and me. That's our family. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't think Dad would want them to have his money. Why do you say that? Because they never came to see him when he was alive. They only care now that he's gone. 9 years old, and already he could see what had taken me 35 years to understand. That night after Ethan was asleep, I sat in Jake's study and opened our filing cabinet. Life insurance policy, will, bank statements, everything Jake had worked so hard to provide for us. 6 figures. They wanted 6 figures of Jake's life insurance money for Ryan's cryptocurrency scheme, money that was supposed to pay for Ethan's college, money that was supposed to keep us secure while I rebuilt our life, money they had no claim to whatsoever. I thought about Aunt May's words, "Your mother sees relationships as transactions." Well, they'd just shown me exactly what this transaction was worth to them, and I was about to show them what it was worth to me. The next morning, I called David Chen, Jake's lawyer and our family friend. We'd used him for everything, buying the house, writing our wills, setting up Ethan's college fund. Jake trusted him completely. "Hannah, I'm so sorry for your loss," David said when I reached him. "Jake was a good man. How are you holding up?" "I'm managing, David. I need to ask you something about Jake's will and the life insurance. Of course. What's on your mind? I told him about my family's visit, about Ryan's investment opportunity, about the pressure they were applying. David was quiet for a long moment. Hannah, let me be very clear. Jake set everything up in an irrevocable trust. You're the primary beneficiary and trustee. Ethan becomes a beneficiary at 18 with full control at 25. No one else has any legal claim to those funds. Not your parents, not your brother, not anyone. So they can't touch a penny. Jake was very specific about this. He wanted to make sure you and Ethan were protected, no matter what happened. I felt like I could breathe for the first time since yesterday. But David, I said, what if they try to pressure me? What if they claim some kind of family obligation? Hannah, you don't owe anyone an explanation about how you handle your husband's estate. In fact, if anyone tries to coerce you into giving them money that could constitute financial abuse, I'd be happy to send a letter making your position clear. Would you do that? Already drafting it. That afternoon, I called Aunt May and asked if she could come over. I needed to understand something about my family's history. May arrived with homemade cookies and her usual no-nonsense attitude. We sat in my kitchen while Ethan was at soccer practice. Tell me about what really happened with Grandpa's will, I said. May stirred her coffee slowly. How much do you really want to know? Everything. She sighed. Your grandfather was a smart man. He saw how your mother operated, always asking for money, always finding reasons why she deserved more than everyone else. When he got sick, Linda moved in to take care of him. That sounds noble. It was, for about 2 weeks. Then she started talking about how expensive his medications were, how much she was sacrificing, how her caregiving should be considered when he updated his will. I felt a chill. What did Grandpa do? He called me. Said he was worried Linda was more interested in his bank account than his health. So he had his lawyer draw up a very specific will. Everything split equally between his 3 children. Linda, me, and your Uncle Paul. But Mom expected more. She expected everything. When the will was read, Linda was furious. She claimed that since she'd been his caregiver, she deserved the house and the bulk of his savings. She hired a lawyer to contest it. Did she win? She couldn't. The will was airtight, and your grandfather had documented everything. But she spent 2 years trying. She called me every week, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, demanding I do the right thing and sign over my inheritance to her. What did you say? I said no, every single time. Because you know what Linda never mentioned during those 2 years of phone calls. She never once said she missed him. Never talked about how much she loved him. It was always about the money. The pattern was becoming clear. When she realized she couldn't get the money legally, she tried emotional manipulation. Said the family was falling apart, that Grandpa would have wanted us to stick together, that I was being selfish. That's when you two stopped talking. That's when I realized Linda doesn't see people as people. She sees them as assets. And when an asset stops being useful, May shrugged. She moves on. That evening, Ethan came home from soccer practice, muddy and exhausted. We ordered pizza and sat on the couch to watch a movie, something we'd been doing every Friday night since Jake died. Our new tradition. Halfway through the movie, Ethan paused it. Mom, can I ask you something? Always. Yesterday, when Grandpa and Grandma were here, they kept talking about Dad's money like it wasn't really ours. I chose my words carefully. What do you mean? Like they said it should stay in the family, but we are family. Dad was my dad, not theirs. So why do they think they get to decide what happens to what he left us? 9 years old and he'd cut right to the heart of it. You're absolutely right, Ethan. Dad left that money for us, for your college, for our house, for our future. Nobody else gets to make decisions about it. Good. He unpaused the movie, then paused it again. Mom? Yeah. I don't think Dad would like Uncle Ryan very much. Why do you say that? Dad always said that people who brag about money usually don't have any, and Uncle Ryan talks about money a lot. Jake had said that. It was one of his favorite observations about people. Dad also said that if someone tries to rush you into a big decision, it's probably not a good decision. He did say that. So Uncle Ryan wanting an answer by Friday? Ethan looked at me seriously. That's rushing, right? That's definitely rushing. Then we shouldn't do it. We finished the movie in comfortable silence, but as I tucked Ethan into bed that night, he had one more question. Mom, are you going to tell them no? I am. Are they going to be mad? I thought about that. Probably, but Ethan sometimes doing the right thing makes people mad. Dad taught me that. What if they don't talk to us anymore? The question hung in the air. I looked at my son, this brave little boy, who'd just lost his father and was now worried about losing his grandparents too. Then we'll know where we really stand with them, I said finally. And maybe that's not such a bad thing to know. Saturday morning, I sat in Jake's study with David's letter in front of me. It was 2 pages of legal language that boiled down to one simple message: the money stays with Hannah and Ethan, end of discussion. But I wasn't going to need the letter, because I'd realized something important. My family had taught me exactly who they were. Now it was time to show them exactly who I was. And that person, she didn't negotiate with people who saw her dead husband's life insurance as a business opportunity. Wednesday afternoon, my father called. Hannah, your mother and I would like to have the family over for brunch this Sunday. Nothing fancy, just family. We haven't all been together in so long. I almost laughed. We hadn't all been together because they never invited us to anything. Who's coming? I asked. Oh, just the usual crowd. Your Uncle Paul and Aunt Janet, the Hendersons from next door. You remember them? They're practically family. And of course Ryan will be there. Of course Ryan would be there. Dad, if this is about the investment thing... Oh, no. This is just family time. We can talk about that other matter later if you want. No pressure. Right. No pressure. With witnesses. We'll be there, I said. That gave me 4 days to prepare. Thursday morning, I called David Chen again. I need you to prepare copies of Jake's will and the trust documents. Clean copies highlighted where it shows the beneficiaries. Planning to make a statement. Planning to end a conversation. Friday, I sat down with Ethan after school. Grandpa invited us to brunch on Sunday. I think Uncle Ryan is going to try to convince me about his investment again. Ethan looked up from his math homework. Are you going to say no? I am, but I want you to be prepared. They might not be happy about it. Mom, can I bring something? What do you mean? I've been working on something, about Dad, about what he would have wanted. That evening, I watched Ethan at the kitchen table with a composition notebook, writing carefully in his neat 4th-grade handwriting. Every few minutes, he'd pause and think, sometimes checking something in one of Jake's old lesson planners. What are you writing, sweetheart? Just things Dad used to say, things he believed in case anyone forgets. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzly. I dressed carefully. My best black dress, the one Jake always said made me look like I could conquer the world. I put David's letter in my purse along with the will copies. Ethan wore his church clothes and carried his notebook. You ready for this? I asked him as we pulled into my parents' driveway. Are you? I think so. My parents lived in a sprawling ranch house in the suburbs, the kind of place that screamed, "We have money," without actually being elegant. Mom had set up the dining room like a boardroom, the good china cloth napkins, fresh flowers from the florist. Uncle Paul and Aunt Janet were already there looking uncomfortable. The Hendersons, family friends who'd been invited to every major Mason family event for 20 years, sat stiffly on the couch. Ryan was at the head of the table with his laptop open. Hannah, Ethan! Mom rushed over to hug us. You look wonderful! How are you holding up, sweetie? We're managing. Dad clapped me on the shoulder. That's our girl. Strong like her old man. Strong like her old man. I wanted to point out that her old man had skipped his son-in-law's funeral for a cruise, but I kept my mouth shut. Brunch was awkward small talk. The Hendersons asked about my architecture firm. Uncle Paul mentioned the weather. Aunt Janet complimented Mom's new kitchen backsplash. Everyone was very carefully not talking about why we were really there, until Dad cleared his throat. Well, since we're all here, Ryan has something exciting to share with everyone. Ryan closed his laptop and smiled. Actually, I brought a proper presentation today. He opened the laptop again and turned it around. On the screen was a slick slide deck, Crypto Vault Industries, the future of digital asset management. Now, I know some of you might think cryptocurrency is complicated, but it's really not, Ryan began. It's just the natural evolution of money. For the next 15 minutes, Ryan walked through charts and graphs and projected returns. He talked about blockchain technology and market disruption and first-mover advantage. The Hendersons nodded politely. Uncle Paul asked a few questions about volatility. The beauty of this opportunity, Ryan concluded, is that we're still in the early adoption phase. Getting in now is like buying Apple stock in 1980. Dad leaned forward. Tell them about the investment minimum. Right. So to really make this worthwhile, we're looking at a minimum investment of $200,000. That gets you in at the founder level with priority returns and equity participation. $200,000. He'd gone up from 6 figures. That's a lot of money, Aunt Janet said. It is, Ryan agreed. But think about it this way. That's less than most people spend on a house, and houses don't typically return 300% in 18 months. Where would someone even get that kind of money? Mrs. Henderson asked. All eyes turned to me. Well, Mom said carefully, Hannah recently came into some funds. Jake had excellent life insurance. And the wonderful thing about life insurance payouts, Dad added, is that they're not taxed. So Hannah could invest the full amount without worrying about capital gains. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. They'd invited witnesses. They'd prepared a presentation. They'd calculated exactly how much of Jake's life insurance they wanted. What do you think, Hannah? Ryan asked. Ready to secure Ethan's financial future. That's when Ethan spoke up. Can I ask a question? Ryan smiled indulgently. Of course, buddy. What's on your mind? Ethan opened his notebook. My dad used to say that the best investments are in things you understand. Do you understand cryptocurrency, Uncle Ryan? Well, yes. I've been studying it for years. How many years? Seriously, studying it for about 8 months. My dad also said that if someone promises you guaranteed returns, they're probably lying. Are you lying about the 300%? The room went dead silent. Ryan's smile faltered. Ethan, buddy, those are projections based on market analysis. So they're not guaranteed. Well, no, but... And my dad said that people who really care about your future don't pressure you to make fast decisions. Why do we have to decide by Friday? Mom jumped in. Ethan, sweetheart, this is adult business. It's my dad's money, Ethan said simply. That makes it my business, too. He looked around the table at all the adults staring at him. My dad was a teacher. He taught kids that the most important thing in math is to check your work, so I checked Uncle Ryan's work. Ethan flipped to a page in his notebook covered in careful calculations. If Uncle Ryan needs $200,000 and he says there are 3 other investors, that's $800,000 total, but his presentation says he needs $1.2 million to launch the company. So either he's lying about the other investors or he's lying about how much money he needs. Ryan's face went red. Those numbers are... It's more complicated than that. My dad also taught me that people who really know what they're talking about can explain it simply. Can you explain it simply, Uncle Ryan? The silence stretched on. Finally, I spoke up. He can't explain it simply because it's not a real investment opportunity, Ethan. It's a scam. I pulled out David's letter and the will copies. Dad, Mom, Ryan, I want to be very clear about something. Jake left his life insurance to me and Ethan. It's in an irrevocable trust. No one else has any legal claim to it. If you continue to pressure me for this money, my lawyer will be forced to treat it as financial harassment. I handed a copy of the will to Dad, another to Uncle Paul. Jake was very specific about who he wanted to take care of his family's future. And it wasn't any of you. Mom's face went white. Hannah, we're just trying to help. Help you missed Jake's funeral for a vacation. You waited 10 days to even check on us. And the first time you visit, you ask for money. That's not help, Mom. That's opportunism. Ryan slammed his laptop shut. This is ridiculous. Hannah, you're making a huge mistake. This kind of opportunity doesn't come around twice. You're right, I said. It doesn't. And I'm not missing my opportunity to protect my son's future from people who see his father's death as a business opportunity. I stood up. Come on, Ethan. We're leaving. As we headed for the door, Ethan turned back to the table. Thank you for brunch. But next time you want to honor my dad's memory, maybe try just missing him instead of trying to spend his money. We walked out to absolute silence. In the car, Ethan buckled his seatbelt and looked at me. Mom, yeah, I think Dad would be proud of us. I looked back at my parents' house where my family was probably trying to figure out how their intervention had gone so wrong. Yeah, I said, I think he would be too. But we weren't quite done yet. As I reached for the door handle, Ethan stopped. Wait, Mom, I forgot something. He turned back to face the table full of adults who were still processing what had just happened. I wrote something else, he said, flipping to a different page in his notebook. Aunt May helped me with the big words, but the ideas are mine. The room fell silent again. Even Ryan stopped fidgeting with his laptop. Ethan cleared his throat and began to read in his clear 9-year-old voice. My dad was Jacob Michael Blake. He was 37 years old when he died. He taught 7th grade math at Madison Middle School for 9 years. He stayed after school every Tuesday and Thursday to help kids who were struggling. He bought school supplies with his own money when the budget ran out. He never missed one of my soccer games, even when he had parent conferences the same night. Ethan paused and looked around the table. My dad believed in helping people, not using them. He believed that family means showing up when someone needs you, not just when you want something from them. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. You didn't come to his funeral. You didn't help my mom when she was crying every night. You didn't bring us food or help with the bills or ask if we needed anything. But now you want his money. The silence was deafening. Mrs. Henderson looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Uncle Paul was staring at his hands. My dad used to say that you can tell who someone really is by watching what they do when they think nobody's looking. Well, we were looking, and we saw exactly who you are. Ethan's voice got stronger with each word. You think you deserve anything he left behind because you're family, but family doesn't skip funerals for vacations. Family doesn't wait 10 days to check if you're okay. Family doesn't turn someone's death into a business opportunity. Ryan started to speak. Ethan, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Ethan said, cutting him off. You want $200,000 of my college money for a business that might not even exist. My dad would have called that stealing. He closed his notebook and looked directly at my parents. My dad left that money for me and my mom because he loved us and wanted to take care of us. He didn't leave it for you because, well, when did you ever take care of us? The question hung in the air like a bomb. Mom finally found her voice. Ethan, sweetheart, that's not fair. We've always... Always what? Ethan asked. Always missed my birthday parties, always been too busy for Christmas, always had somewhere more important to be. Dad's face was turning red. Now see here, young man. No. Ethan's voice was calm but firm. You see here. My dad is dead. My mom is sad every day, but she's trying to take care of me anyway. And instead of helping us, you're trying to take the only thing he left to make sure we'd be okay. He opened his notebook one more time. I wrote down some of the things my dad used to say. He said that people's true character shows up in how they treat people who can't do anything for them. He said that love is about what you give, not what you get. And he said that the most important thing in life is taking care of the people who depend on you. Ethan looked around the table at each adult. So my question is, when have any of you ever taken care of us? When have you ever given us anything without expecting something back? When have you ever treated us like we mattered more than money?" Uncle Paul shifted uncomfortably. Aunt Janet was dabbing at her eyes with her napkin. The Hendersons looked like they wished they'd never come. "That's what I thought," Ethan said quietly. "So, no Uncle Ryan. You can't have my dad's money for your fake business. And no Grandpa and Grandma. You can't guilt-trip my mom into giving it to you either." He tucked his notebook under his arm. "My dad worked really hard to make sure we'd be safe if something happened to him. And something did happen to him. So now it's my job to make sure his hard work wasn't wasted on people who never cared about us in the first place." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't just shock, this was shame. 9-year-old Ethan Blake had just delivered the most devastating character assessment any of them had ever heard, and every word of it was true. I looked around the table at my family, really looked at them. Dad's face was purple with anger and embarrassment. Mom was crying, but whether from shame or frustration I couldn't tell. Ryan had closed his laptop and was staring at the table. Uncle Paul and Aunt Janet looked like they wanted to disappear. And the Hendersons, family friends for 20 years, were looking at my parents like they were seeing them for the first time. That's when I realized something important. This wasn't just about the money. This was about Ethan learning to stand up for himself, for us, for what was right. This was about him understanding that being family doesn't give you the right to take advantage of people. This was about my 9-year-old son teaching a room full of adults what integrity looks like. "Ethan's right," I said finally, "about all of it." I looked directly at my parents. "If anyone here still thinks they're entitled to my husband's legacy, you can leave now. Because Jake's legacy isn't money. It's the man he raised our son to be. And that legacy is staying right where it belongs." I stood up and took Ethan's hand. "Thank you for the brunch invitation, but we won't be needing any more family meetings about our finances." As we walked toward the door, Dad finally exploded. "You're making a huge mistake, Hannah. That boy needs guidance from the men in this family. You can't raise him alone." I stopped and turned around one last time. The men in his family. I looked at Dad, then at Ryan. The men who skip funerals for vacations and see grief as a business opportunity. No thanks. Ethan's got the only male role model he needs. "Who?" Dad demanded. "His father. Even dead Jake's a better man than any of you have ever been." And with that, we walked out of my parents' house for what I knew would be the last time. In the car, Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Mom, was I too mean?" "No, sweetheart. You were honest. There's a difference." "Do you think they'll change?" I thought about that as I started the car. "I don't know, but it doesn't matter anymore. We're not waiting around to find out." "Good," Ethan said, buckling his seatbelt. "Dad always said that life's too short to spend it on people who don't appreciate you." Jake had said that. It was one of his favorite pieces of wisdom. He did say that. "So we're free now." Free. What a perfect word for it. "Yeah, Ethan, we're free." Actually, my parents and Ryan didn't storm out. They couldn't. We'd already left. But according to Mrs. Henderson, who called me that evening, the aftermath was even better than I could have imagined. "Hannah, honey," she said, "I've never seen anything like it. After you left, your father started yelling about disrespect and ingratitude. Your mother was crying, saying you'd turned Ethan against them. And Ryan just kept muttering about missed opportunities. What did everyone else do? Well, that's the thing. Your Uncle Paul stood up and said he thought Ethan was the most mature person in the room. Then he and Janet left. I've never seen your father so speechless." Mrs. Henderson paused. "Hannah, I owe you an apology. We should have said something during that meeting. What they were doing, it wasn't right." That phone call was the first of many. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone rang constantly. Uncle Paul called to apologize for staying silent. Aunt Janet sent a card with a heartfelt note about how proud Jake would have been of Ethan. Even some of my parents' neighbors reached out, having heard about the family meeting through the suburban gossip network. The most surprising call came from my cousin, Jessica, Uncle Paul's daughter. Hannah, I had to call you. Dad told me what happened at that brunch. I'm so sorry about Jake, and I'm even more sorry about how your parents acted. Thank you, Jess. But here's the thing. Ryan tried to pitch me the same investment scheme 6 months ago. I turned him down because the numbers didn't make sense. He's been working this angle for a while. How many people has he approached? At least 4 that I know of, all family, all people who recently came into money. Your parents have been helping him identify targets. Targets? That's what we were. Not grieving family members who needed support, but targets for a con game. The most important relationship that grew out of this mess was with Aunt May. She started stopping by every few days, always with some excuse, bringing groceries, helping Ethan with homework, or just checking on us. You know, she said one afternoon while we watched Ethan play in the backyard. Your mother called me yesterday. Really, what did she want? To tell me how disappointed she was in my influence on you and Ethan. Apparently, I've been filling your heads with poison about the family. I almost laughed. What did you say? I told her that the truth isn't poison just because it tastes bitter. May became the grandmother figure Ethan had always deserved. She taught him to bake Jake's favorite cookies. She shared stories about my childhood that I'd forgotten. She showed up to his soccer games with homemade signs and cheered louder than anyone. Most importantly, she talked about Jake like he was still part of our lives. Your dad would have loved this math test, she'd tell Ethan when he brought home a perfect score. He always said you had his brain for numbers. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I made a decision that surprised even me. I was going through Jake's papers, organizing everything for tax season, when I found his old teaching journals. Page after page of notes about students who were struggling, kids who needed extra help, families who couldn't afford supplies. That's when I knew what to do with part of the life insurance money. I called Principal Martinez at Madison Middle School. Mrs. Blake, how wonderful to hear from you. How are you and Ethan doing? We're healing. Actually, I'm calling because I want to establish something in Jake's memory. A scholarship fund for students who need financial help with school supplies, field trips, things like that. Hannah, that would be incredible. Jake would be so honored. I want to fund it with $50,000 to start. Is that something the school can manage? There was silence on the other end. Then, Hannah, are you sure that's a substantial amount? I'm sure. Jake always said that education was the best investment you could make in someone's future. I can't think of a better way to honor his memory. The Jacob Blake Memorial Fund was established 3 months after his death. The first recipient was Maria, the shy 7th grader, who'd brought me the card at Jake's funeral. She used the scholarship to attend a summer math camp that her family couldn't afford. As word spread about the scholarship, something beautiful happened. Other teachers started contributing. Parents whose kids Jake had taught donated. Even some of his former students now in high school and college sent small amounts. The fund grew beyond anything I'd imagined. But the most meaningful contribution came from an unexpected source. 8 months after the funeral, I received a check in the mail for $500. The return address was Uncle Paul and Aunt Janet's house. The memo line read, "For Jake's kids, the way family should help family." A week later, Aunt Janet called. I hope the check helps with the scholarship fund. Paul and I have been talking a lot since that brunch. We realized we've been letting your parents set the tone for how this family operates. That stops now. You don't have to. Yes, we do. We stayed silent when we should have spoken up. We let you face that ambush alone when we should have walked out with you. This is our way of saying we're sorry and we want to do better. My parents. Radio silence. Complete radio silence. Ryan sent one text message 3 months later. Cryptocurrency up 400% this month. Hope you're not regretting your decision. I deleted it without responding. A year after Jake's death, Ethan and I developed a new tradition. Every Sunday after church, we'd visit Jake's grave. Not to be sad, but to update him on our lives. This particular Sunday was different. It was the 1-year anniversary of the Jacob Blake Memorial Fund, and I had news to share. Dad, the scholarship helped 28 kids this year, Ethan said, sitting cross-legged next to Jake's headstone. 28 Mom says that's more kids than you had in your entire 7th grade class. I knelt beside them both. The principal says they want to make it a permanent endowment. Other schools are asking how to set up similar programs. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. The cemetery was peaceful, with old oak trees providing shade and birds singing in the distance. Mom, Ethan said finally, do you think things would have been different if Dad was still alive? With Grandpa and Grandma, I mean? It was a question I'd asked myself many times. I think they would have treated your dad the same way they treated us. Like he wasn't quite good enough for their standards. But he was better than all of them. Yes, he was. Do you miss them, Grandpa and Grandma? I considered that. I miss the idea of them. I miss having parents who would put family first. But the actual people they are? No, I don't miss them. Ethan nodded solemnly. Aunt May says that sometimes people show you who they really are, and you have to believe them. Aunt May's right. I'm glad we believed them. As we got ready to leave, Ethan placed his hand on his father's headstone. Dad, I wanted you to know something. I miss you every day. I miss your terrible jokes and the way you helped me with math homework and how you always made Sunday morning pancakes shaped like animals. His voice got stronger. But I think you'd be proud that we didn't let them win. We protected what you left for us. We helped other kids the way you always helped kids. And we figured out that the real family isn't the people who share your last name, it's the people who show up when you need them. He stood up and brushed grass off his knees. I miss him, Mom, but I think he'd be proud we didn't let them win. Walking back to the car, I realized Ethan was right. We hadn't just protected Jake's financial legacy, we'd protected his values, his belief that education matters, his conviction that family means showing up, his faith that doing the right thing is always worth it even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. My parents had taught me exactly who they were, but more importantly, they'd taught Ethan exactly who he didn't want to become. And that might have been the greatest gift they ever gave us. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most show you exactly who they really are. And sometimes a 9-year-old has more wisdom than all the adults in the room combined. If stories like this remind you that family isn't always about blood, but about who shows up when it matters, hit that subscribe button. I share real stories about real people finding their strength when everything falls apart. What would you have done in Hannah's situation? Let me know in the comments below.